The morning rush at Sunshine Diner had finally calmed down, and Lily wiped the sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand. She tucked a loose strand of brown hair behind her ear and glanced at the clock. 3 more hours until her shift ended. Her feet ached in her worn-out sneakers as she filled coffee cups and cleared plates from the counter. Lily had been working at the small-town diner for almost 2 years now. It wasn't glamorous, but the tips were decent, and the flexible hours let her attend graduate school classes in the evenings. At 26, she was older than most of her classmates, but that didn't bother her. What mattered was finishing her degree no matter how long it took. "Order up." Bobby, the cook, called from the kitchen window, ringing the small bell twice. Lily grabbed the plates of scrambled eggs and hash browns, balancing them expertly on her arm as she had done thousands of times before. She delivered the food with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The customer, an older man with kind eyes who came in every Thursday, thanked her warmly. "You look tired today, honey," he said, unfolding his napkin. "Everything okay?" "Just school and work," Lily replied with a small shrug. The usual. What she didn't say was how she had stayed up until 3 a.m. finishing a paper, only to wake up at 5:30 for her morning shift. She didn't mention the growing pile of bills on her kitchen table, or how her ancient car had started making a concerning clicking noise that she couldn't afford to fix. The bell above the door jingled, and Lily glanced over to see Frank, the diner's owner, walk in. He was a short man with a round belly and a receding hairline who had inherited the place from his father. Most days he only stopped by to check the register and complain about something. Today he carried a stack of bright yellow flyers and wore an unusual smile. "Morning, everyone," he announced loudly, nodding at the 3 waitresses and Bobby. "I've got exciting news." Lily exchanged a look with Trish, the oldest server who had worked at the diner for over 20 years. Frank's exciting news usually meant more work for the same pay. "Business has been slow lately," Frank continued, slapping one of the yellow flyers on the counter. "So I've decided we're going to start hosting special events. Beginning next month, every Friday will be open mic night at Sunshine Diner." He looked around expectantly, clearly waiting for enthusiasm that didn't come. "Open mic?" Bobby asked, leaning through the kitchen window with a spatula in hand. "Like singing and stuff?" "Singing, comedy, poetry, whatever brings in customers," Frank replied. "We'll keep the kitchen open late, sell some booze with our new license, and hopefully fill this place up on Friday nights." Trish crossed her arms. "And who's going to work these late Fridays?" "All of you, of course," Frank said, his smile never faltering. "With rotating schedules. But here's the best part. All staff will participate in the performances." The diner fell silent. Lily felt her stomach drop. "What do you mean, participate?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Frank waved the flyer in the air. "It says right here, featuring performances by our talented staff. Everyone will need to do something. Sing, tell jokes, whatever. The customers will love it." The blood drained from Lily's face. The mere thought of standing in front of a crowd made her hands shake. She had suffered from severe stage fright since elementary school when she froze during a class presentation and wet herself in front of everyone. The memory still haunted her, and she had carefully arranged her life to avoid any kind of public performance. "I can't do that," she said firmly, surprising herself with her boldness. Frank's smile faded. "Everyone participates, Lily, no exceptions." But nothing," he interrupted. "This diner needs more business, or I might have to cut hours. Or worse." The threat hung in the air. "So everyone performs, or they can find another job. Simple as that." He moved around the diner, taping flyers to the windows and walls before disappearing into his small office at the back. Trish placed a comforting hand on Lily's shoulder. "You okay, honey? You look like you've seen a ghost." Lily shook her head, unable to speak. Her throat had tightened and she felt the familiar signs of panic creeping up. Racing heart, shortness of breath, dizziness. "I need air," she managed to say, rushing out the back door into the alley behind the diner. The cool morning air helped a little. Lily leaned against the brick wall, sliding down until she sat on an empty milk crate. She put her head between her knees and focused on breathing, just like her therapist had taught her years ago. In, out, in, out. After a few minutes, her heart rate slowed down, but her mind continued to race. She couldn't perform in front of strangers. She just couldn't. But she also couldn't lose this job. Her tiny apartment, her tuition payments, even her meals, everything depended on her income from the diner. The back door creaked open, and Bobby stepped out, lighting a cigarette. "You hiding from Frank too?" he asked, offering her the pack. Lily shook her head. "I don't smoke. And I'm not hiding. I just needed a minute." Bobby nodded, leaning against the wall. "This open mic thing is stupid, but I guess I can always tell some dad jokes or something." "What will you do?" "I don't know," Lily admitted. "I can't even imagine standing on a stage." "Stage?" Bobby laughed. "It'll probably just be that empty corner by the jukebox with a microphone. Nothing fancy." That didn't make Lily feel any better. A stage was a stage, whether it was Madison Square Garden or a dingy corner in a small-town diner. "I have terrible stage fright," she explained. "Like medical condition bad." Bobby took a long drag from his cigarette. "That's rough. But maybe you could do something that doesn't feel like performing. Read a poem with your back to the audience? Play a recording and lip sync?" Lily appreciated his effort, but none of those options seemed possible. The thought of all those eyes on her, judging her, waiting for her to mess up, it was overwhelming. "I should just quit," she whispered, more to herself than to Bobby. "And go where?" he asked gently. "Jobs aren't exactly growing on trees around here." He was right. Their small town had limited opportunities, especially with flexible hours for students. She had searched for months before finding the position at Sunshine Diner. When Lily's break ended, she returned to work with a heavy heart. The yellow flyers seemed to mock her from every wall. Customers were already asking about the open mic night, some expressing interest in performing themselves. That evening, after her shift in class, Lily sat at her small kitchen table with a cup of tea. Her apartment was quiet except for the occasional creak from the old building and the distant sound of her neighbor's television. She pulled out her laptop and searched for how to overcome severe stage fright for what felt like the 100th time in her life. She had tried everything over the years: therapy, medication, self-help books, hypnosis. Nothing had worked completely. As she scrolled through the familiar advice, her eyes landed on a small wooden box tucked away on her bookshelf. It had belonged to her grandmother, who had passed away 5 years ago. Inside were treasured mementos, including a small silver locket containing her grandmother's picture. Her grandmother had been the one person who truly understood Lily's anxiety. "Everyone has their mountains to climb," she used to say. "Yours just happens to have an audience at the top." Lily smiled at the memory. Her grandmother had never pushed her to get over her fear like others did. Instead, she encouraged Lily to find her own path, to work with her anxiety rather than fight against it. Opening the box, Lily lifted out the locket and held it in her palm. The weight of it was comforting somehow. As she stared at it, a crazy idea began to form in her mind. Maybe there was a way to perform without really performing. To be present without being seen. To share something meaningful without exposing her most vulnerable self. For the first time since Frank's announcement, Lily felt a tiny spark of hope. She might not be able to stand on a stage and sing or tell jokes, but perhaps there was another way. A way that honored both her limitations and her need to keep this job. She closed her hand around the locket and took a deep breath. 1 month. She had 1 month to figure it out before the first open mic night. 1 month to either find her courage or find a new job. Either way, her life at Sunshine Diner was about to change forever. 2 weeks had passed since Frank's announcement, and the yellow flyers for the open mic night were now plastered all over town. Lily had tried to push the thought from her mind, focusing instead on her daily routine of classes, studying and serving coffee to the morning regulars. But time was running out. "So what are you going to do for the show?" asked Trish as they refilled salt shakers after the lunch rush. The older waitress had already announced she would recite "Casey at the Bat," a poem she had memorized in high school and still remembered by heart. Lily shrugged, avoiding eye contact. "I'm still figuring it out. You better decide soon," Trish warned. "Frank's making us all sign up by the end of the week. He's even got a little stage being built in the corner." Lily glanced toward the back of the diner where 2 men were measuring the space near the jukebox. Her stomach knotted at the sight. That evening, after her shift ended, Lily didn't head straight home or to the library as usual. Instead, she drove to the edge of town, to a small house with peeling white paint and overgrown rose bushes in the front yard. She sat in her car for nearly 20 minutes, gathering courage before finally walking up the cracked concrete path to the door. She used her key, stepping into the quiet house that smelled faintly of dust and lavender. It had been her childhood home, but she hadn't lived there in years. After her mother died, Lily couldn't bear to sell it, though she couldn't afford to maintain it properly either. So it sat, mostly untouched, holding memories both beautiful and painful. Lily moved through the familiar rooms, running her fingers along the furniture draped in old sheets. In the living room, she stopped before a large object covered by a faded bedspread. Taking a deep breath, she pulled the fabric away, sending dust motes dancing in the fading afternoon light. The grand piano gleamed despite the years of neglect. It was a Steinway, a relic from a different time, a time when the house was filled with music and laughter. Lily's hand hovered over the ivory keys but didn't touch them. How long had it been? 6 years, 7? She couldn't remember the last time she had played. Not since before her mother's illness. Growing up, music had been everything to Lily. Her mother, a music teacher at the local high school, had started her on piano lessons when she was just 4 years old. By 12, she was playing Chopin. By 16, she was composing her own pieces and singing with a voice that made people stop and listen. Everyone had expected her to pursue music in college, maybe Juilliard or Berkeley. Lily had dreamed of it too. But then her mother got sick and everything changed. The cancer moved quickly. Too quickly. Within months, her vibrant, music-loving mother was gone, leaving behind medical bills, a mortgage, and a daughter whose heart no longer had room for music. Lily had packed away her sheet music, covered the piano, and locked that part of herself away. She chose a practical major in college, accounting, and found practical jobs to pay the bills. Music became a painful reminder of everything she had lost. Now, standing before the piano again, Lily felt a familiar ache in her chest. She sat slowly on the bench, the wood creaking beneath her weight. "This is stupid," she whispered to the empty house. But her fingers found the keys anyway, pressing gently. The note rang out, slightly out of tune from years of disuse but still clear. She played another, then another, simple scale she had learned as a child coming back to her muscle memory. The sound filled the empty house, disturbing dust and ghosts. Lily closed her eyes as her fingers moved more confidently across the keys, finding a melody she had written long ago, a birthday gift for her mother when she turned 40. She stopped abruptly when her vision blurred with tears. This was exactly why she had stayed away. Music hurt too much. It opened wounds she had carefully bandaged over the years. Rising from the bench, she quickly covered the piano again and left the house, locking memories inside once more. The next day at work, Frank cornered her by the coffee machine. "So what are you doing for the open mic?" he asked, clipboard in hand. "Everyone else has signed up already." "I'm still thinking about it." "Time's up, Lily," he said firmly. "Pick something or I'll pick for you. Maybe washing dishes instead of waiting tables." The threat was clear. Lily swallowed hard. "I'll play piano," she said suddenly, surprising herself as much as Frank. "Just instrumental. No singing," Frank scribbled on his clipboard. "Piano? We don't have a piano." "I know where I can get a keyboard," Lily said, thinking of her neighbor's teenage son who played in a garage band. "I'll bring it." "Fine. You're slotted for the first night right after Trish's poem." Frank walked away before she could protest. What had she done? Panic rose in her throat as she mechanically poured coffee for a customer. She had just committed to doing the one thing she had sworn never to do again. That night, Lily returned to her mother's house with a small duffel bag. If she was going to do this, she needed to practice. The thought of performing still made her queasy, but the thought of losing her job was worse. She couldn't afford to pay both her rent and the taxes on this house without her waitressing income. She uncovered the piano again and opened the bench seat, pulling out yellowed sheet music. Her old compositions were there, along with classical pieces she had mastered years ago. Her fingers trembled as she sorted through them. One piece caught her eye, something she had written during her mother's illness. She had never finished it, abandoning it half completed when hope gave way to grief. The pages were tear-stained in places, the pencil marks smudged. Lily placed it on the piano stand and began to play the opening bars. The music was haunting, full of questions without answers. She stumbled over the notes, her skills rusty from disuse. "Come on," she muttered to herself, starting again. "You used to do this in your sleep." She played for hours, night after night, returning to her mother's house after work or class. Slowly, her fingers remembered their old grace. The music came back haltingly at first, then more confidently, As she played, she began to add to the unfinished piece, finding notes to express what she had never been able to say with words: her grief, her loneliness, her struggle to move forward while honoring what was lost. 1 week before the open mic night, Lily found herself humming as she played, then quietly singing wordless melodies. Her voice was rough from lack of use, but it gained strength with each passing day. She hadn't planned to sing at the open mic. The thought still terrified her. But as the piece evolved, she realized that it needed vocals to be complete. The piano alone couldn't tell the whole story. 3 days before her performance, Lily sat at the piano with a blank sheet of paper, penning lyrics for the first time in years. The words came slowly, painfully, like pulling splinters from deep under skin. By midnight, she had a full page of lyrics that told the story of loss, survival, and the courage to begin again. She sang them quietly, afraid to give them too much voice. What if she couldn't do this in front of an audience? What if she froze like she had in elementary school? What if people laughed or worse, pitied her? But beneath the fear was something else, something she hadn't felt in a long time. A tiny spark of excitement, of connection to a part of herself she had buried. The night before the open mic, Lily couldn't sleep. She paced her small apartment, going over the music in her head. She had borrowed the keyboard as planned and practiced on it too, though it couldn't compare to her mother's grand piano. At 3 a.m., she made a decision. She drove to her mother's house one last time, let herself in, and uncovered the piano. In the dark, lit only by moonlight streaming through dusty windows, she played her piece from beginning to end, singing the lyrics with all the emotion she had held back for years. When the final note faded, Lily sat in silence, tears streaming down her face. She placed her hand on the piano lid. "I miss you, Mom," she whispered. "I hope you can hear this tomorrow." As she covered the piano again, she realized something had shifted inside her. The music no longer hurt quite so much. Instead, it felt like a connection to her mother, a way to keep her memory alive. Tomorrow night, for the first time in years, Lily would share that connection with others. The thought still scared her. But now there was something else too, a sense that perhaps this forced performance wasn't just about keeping her job. Maybe it was about finding her voice again. The day of the first open mic night arrived, and Sunshine Diner buzzed with unusual energy. Frank had outdone himself with the preparations. The corner by the jukebox now featured a small raised platform with a microphone stand and colored lights. Handwritten signs on each table announced drink specials, and extra chairs had been brought in to increase seating. Lily arrived for her afternoon shift with the borrowed keyboard in its case, her hands shaking so badly she nearly dropped it twice. She had barely slept, and dark circles shadowed her eyes. Her stomach churned with a mix of dread and nausea that made it impossible to eat. "There she is, our piano girl," Frank called when he spotted her. He wore a button-down shirt instead of his usual stained polo, a sign of how seriously he was taking the event. "You can set up your keyboard during your break. We've got an outlet ready for you." Lily nodded mutely, heading to the back room to put on her apron. Trish was already there, looking unusually dressed up with lipstick and her gray hair pulled into a neat bun. "Nervous?" Trish asked, watching Lily's trembling hands. "Terrified," Lily admitted. Trish squeezed her shoulder. "You'll do fine. Nobody's expecting anything fancy. Most folks will be focused on their food anyway." But that wasn't true. All afternoon, regular customers talked excitedly about the evening's performances. Several mentioned they had invited friends specifically to hear the staff perform. By 5 o'clock, the diner was fuller than Lily had ever seen it, with more people arriving steadily. During her break, Lily set up the keyboard on the small stage, testing to make sure it worked. The sound wasn't as rich as her mother's piano, but it would do. She adjusted the microphone height with Bobby's help, her heart racing as she imagined herself standing there in just a few hours. "You okay?" Bobby asked, noticing her pale face. "You look like you might pass out." "I'm fine," Lily lied, quickly stepping away from the stage. Back in the kitchen, she splashed cold water on her face, trying to calm her racing heart. What had she been thinking? She couldn't do this. She should just tell Frank she was sick, grab her things, and run out the door. But as she considered escape, she caught sight of her reflection in the small mirror above the sink. Her mother's eyes stared back at her. People always said they looked alike. Same brown eyes, same determined chin. "I can't do this." "Mom," Lily whispered. She could almost hear her mother's gentle voice in response. You can do anything, Lily Pad. You just have to take it one note at a time. The childhood nickname brought unexpected tears to her eyes. She wiped them away quickly as the door swung open and Bobby poked his head in. Frank says to get back on the floor. It's packed out there. The rest of her shift passed in a blur. Lily moved mechanically between tables, taking orders and delivering food, barely registering the conversations around her. More than once she had to ask customers to repeat themselves because her mind was elsewhere. At 7:30, Frank clinked a spoon against a glass, calling for everyone's attention. The diner fell quiet, every table now filled with expectant faces. "Welcome everyone to the first ever Sunshine Diner open mic night," he announced proudly. "We've got a great lineup for you tonight, starting with our very own staff showcasing their hidden talents." Applause filled the small space. Lily, standing in the back corner, felt lightheaded. She was third on the program. Trish would go first with her poem, followed by Bobby doing what he called stand-up comedy for people who hate laughing, then Lily. "First up," Frank continued, "our longest-serving waitress, Trish Miller, with a classic American poem." Trish walked confidently to the microphone, cleared her throat, and began reciting Casey at the Bat, with surprising dramatic flair. The audience listened politely, chuckling at the appropriate moments and applauding warmly when she finished. Bobby went next, telling jokes that weren't particularly funny but delivered with such self-deprecating charm that people laughed anyway. Lily barely heard him, her pulse pounding in her ears as her turn approached. "And now," Frank said after Bobby's final punchline fell flat, "we have Lily Chen on piano and—" He looked at his notes, confused. "Vocals? I thought you were just playing piano." Lily stepped forward, her legs wobbling. "It's, both," she said quietly. The crowd applauded as she made her way to the keyboard. The short distance felt like miles. She sat on the small stool Bobby had found for her, adjusting the microphone with trembling fingers. The faces before her blurred together, dozens of strangers waiting for her to entertain them. Her mouth went dry. Her fingers hovered over the keys but wouldn't move. The silence stretched, becoming uncomfortable. Someone coughed. Someone else whispered. Lily's chest tightened, making it hard to breathe. This was exactly what she had feared. Freezing in front of everyone, becoming a spectacle of failure. She closed her eyes, trying to center herself, but the panic only intensified. She was about to stand up to flee when she felt something warm against her chest, her grandmother's locket, which she had put on that morning for courage. Lily touched it through her shirt, remembering her grandmother's words. "Everyone has their mountains to climb. Yours just happens to have an audience at the top." She took a deep breath and opened her eyes, not looking at the audience but focusing on the keyboard. She didn't have to think about them. She just had to play, one note at a time, like her mother always said. Her fingers found the opening chord, hesitant at first, then with growing confidence. The melody she had practiced so many times flowed from her hands, filling the diner with a haunting, bittersweet sound that silenced even the kitchen staff. When it came time to sing, Lily's voice emerged softly, almost a whisper at first. "Some things we carry, some things we leave behind. But what remains inside us is what we'll always find." Her voice grew stronger with each line, the raw emotion in her words reaching every corner of the now silent diner. She sang about loss and memory, about finding strength in broken places, about honoring the past while moving forward. As she played and sang, something unexpected happened. The fear that had gripped her for so long began to fade, replaced by a sense of connection to the music, to her mother's memory, and somehow to the strangers watching in breathless silence. She forgot about Frank and his ultimatum. She forgot about her job being at stake. She even forgot about her stage fright. For those few minutes, there was only the music, the piece she had written with her heart, the words that had lived inside her for years, waiting to be released. When the final note faded, Lily kept her eyes closed, afraid to break the spell. The silence that followed seemed to stretch forever. Then someone sniffled. Someone else whispered, "Oh my God." And suddenly the diner erupted in applause. Not polite, obligatory clapping, but standing, enthusiastic cheering that startled Lily's eyes open. Through her tears, she saw people on their feet, some wiping their eyes, others smiling in wonder. An elderly woman in the front reached over and squeezed Lily's hand. "That was beautiful, dear," she said, her own eyes moist. "Simply beautiful." Frank stood near the register, his mouth slightly open in shock. Trish and Bobby were beaming from the back, giving her thumbs up. Even the kitchen staff had come out to listen, standing in the doorway with expressions of disbelief. As Lily stood on shaky legs, the applause continued. People she had served coffee to for years looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. In a way they were. She had revealed a part of herself that had been hidden for so long, even from herself. She made her way back to the kitchen, legs still unsteady but for a different reason now. The fear had been replaced by a strange, unfamiliar lightness. Bobby wrapped her in a quick hug and Trish dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. "Good Lord, child," Trish said, shaking her head in wonder. "Where have you been hiding that voice all this time?" Lily couldn't answer. The emotional release of performing her mother's song, of finally giving voice to her grief and hope, had left her speechless. She simply smiled through her tears, feeling both emptied and filled in a way she couldn't explain. Frank appeared in the doorway, still looking stunned. "That was—" he started, seemingly at a loss for words. "That wasn't what I expected." "I know," Lily said quietly. "It wasn't what I expected either." "Well," he cleared his throat, "you're definitely doing that again next week." As Frank hurried back to announce the next performer, a regular customer with a guitar, Lily leaned against the kitchen wall, her heartbeat finally slowing to normal. For the first time in years, she felt truly seen. And for the first time since losing her mother, music didn't just bring pain, it had brought her home. Lily woke the next morning with a strange feeling in her chest, something between relief and disbelief. Had she really performed in front of all those people last night? The memory felt dreamlike, yet the borrowed keyboard still sitting in her living room confirmed it had actually happened. Her phone buzzed with a text from Trish. "People can't stop talking about you. Frank's already got 5 reservations for next Friday." She smiled, setting the phone aside as she got ready for her morning shift. Part of her hoped the whole thing would blow over, that she could return to her quiet life of serving coffee and studying for exams. Another part, a part she barely recognized, felt a spark of excitement at the thought of performing again. When she arrived at Sunshine Diner, she knew immediately that things had changed. Frank greeted her with unexpected enthusiasm, offering her a free coffee. Regular customers who normally barely looked up from their newspapers now watched her with curious eyes. "There she is," said a gray-haired man at the counter, nudging his friend. "Told you she was the one. Great job last night," another customer called out. "My wife cried all the way home." Lily smiled awkwardly, unused to the attention. She tied her apron and tried to focus on work, but throughout her shift people kept mentioning her performance. Some asked if she had studied music professionally. Others wondered if she had written the song herself. A few even requested autographs on their napkins, which made her laugh nervously. "Get used to it," Bobby told her during their break. "You're a local celebrity now." "That's ridiculous," Lily said. But she couldn't ignore the way people were looking at her, not just seeing the quiet waitress anymore, but someone with unexpected depths. At the end of her shift, a woman she didn't recognize approached her. She was in her 50s with stylish glasses and an expensive-looking coat. "Excuse me," the woman said. "I'm Diane Peterson, music director at Westfield Community College." "I was here last night," Lily tensed. "Oh, did you enjoy the show?" "Immensely," Diane replied. "Your composition was extraordinary. I've been teaching music for 25 years and I rarely hear such raw talent." "Did you have formal training?" "My mother taught high school music," Lily explained, feeling strange discussing this part of her life. "She started me on piano when I was little." "Well, she did an excellent job," Diane said. "Listen, we're having a fundraiser concert for our music scholarship program next month. Would you consider performing? We pay our artists, of course." Lily blinked in surprise. "You want me to perform? At a real concert?" "Absolutely. That piece you played, it deserves a wider audience." Before Lily could respond, Frank appeared beside them. "She'll do it," he said firmly. "And make sure they know she plays regularly at Sunshine Diner." After Diane left with Lily's phone number, Frank pulled her aside. "This is great publicity for us," he said. "Friday night was the best business we've had in years. I'm thinking we should feature you every week." "Every week?" Lily's stomach tightened at the thought. "People came to hear you, kid. The other acts were fine, but you're the draw." As Lily walked to her car that evening, She noticed a small group of teenagers huddled around a phone. They looked up as she passed, eyes widening in recognition. "That's her," one whispered loudly. "The waitress from the video." "What video?" Lily asked, stopping. The teens looked embarrassed, but one held out her phone. On the screen was a video titled "Waitress with Amazing Voice Stuns Diner Crowd." Lily watched in horror as she saw herself sitting at the keyboard, looking terrified before starting to play. "My mom shared it," the teen explained. "It's got like 15,000 views already." 15,000? Lily's voice cracked. "Who posted this? Some guy named Rick? He said he was there last night." Rick, one of the regulars who always ordered a Western omelet with extra cheese. Lily vaguely remembered seeing him with his phone out. But she had been so lost in the music she hadn't thought anything of it. She thanked the teens and hurried home, immediately searching for the video online. There it was, her most vulnerable moment shared with strangers without her knowledge or consent. The comment section was filled with praise, but that didn't ease her discomfort at being exposed this way. Her phone rang, her best friend Zoe, calling from Boston where she was in graduate school. "Lily Chen. Why didn't you tell me you were a secret musical genius?" Zoe demanded without preamble. "My mom saw you on Facebook and sent me the link. Since when do you perform?" "I don't," Lily said, collapsing onto her couch. "It was this stupid thing my boss made us do." "Well, it's everywhere now. People are sharing it like crazy." After Zoe hung up, promising to call again soon, Lily sat in stunned silence. Her quiet life had suddenly become very noisy. The thought made her chest tighten with anxiety. That night she couldn't sleep. The video's view count had climbed to 30,000. People from high school she hadn't spoken to in years were sending her messages. A local radio station had called the diner asking for an interview. By morning, the video had over 50,000 views. When Lily arrived at work, a small crowd of unfamiliar faces was waiting for the diner to open. "They've been asking if you're working today," Frank said, looking pleased. "I told them you'd be here until 3. The shift was unlike any Lily had experienced before. People kept asking for photos with her. Some requested songs. Others wanted to know her life story. By noon, she was exhausted from the attention, escaping to the bathroom whenever she could just to breathe. During her break, she called Diane from the community college. "I've been thinking about your offer," she said. "I'm not sure I can do it." "Because of the viral video?" Diane asked, surprising her. "I've seen it. That's actually how my daughter found you. She showed me before I mentioned meeting you." Lily sighed. "I'm not used to this kind of attention." "I understand," Diane said gently. "But sometimes our gifts aren't just for ourselves. That song you wrote, it touched people. Art is meant to be shared even when it's personal. Especially when it's personal." The words stayed with Lily throughout the day, through the stares and whispers, through the constant interruptions and requests. By the time her shift ended, she was emotionally drained, but also thoughtful. She drove to her mother's house again, letting herself in quietly. The piano waited, still uncovered from her last visit. She sat at the bench, not to play, but simply to think. What would her mother say about all this? About her song being heard by thousands of strangers? She could almost hear her mother's voice. "Music is a conversation, Lily Pad. One heart speaking to another." As the sun set, casting long shadows through the dusty windows, Lily made a decision. She pulled out her phone and called Diane. "I'll do the concert," she said. "But I want to play something new, something I'm still writing." That night, Lily stayed at her mother's house, sleeping in her old bedroom for the first time in years. In the morning, she went to the piano and began to work on a new piece. Something about finding your voice when you least expect it. The following Friday, Sunshine Diner was packed again. People lined up outside, hoping for a chance to hear the viral waitress perform. Some had driven from neighboring towns after seeing the video. Frank had expanded the makeshift stage and rented a better keyboard. He'd even printed programs with Lily's name prominently featured. "We're sold out for the next 3 weeks," he told her proudly. "All because of you." Lily nodded, trying to calm her nerves. Despite her successful performance the week before, the fear hadn't completely disappeared. She still felt the familiar tightness in her chest, the shakiness in her hands. But now there was something else too, a sense of purpose, of having found something she had lost long ago. As she prepared to take the stage again, her phone buzzed with a new message. It was from a number she didn't recognize. "Saw your video. Incredibly moving. I'm a producer with Harmony Records in Nashville. Would love to talk when you have a moment. No pressure. Lily stared at the screen, her heart racing. A record producer? Watching her video? It seemed impossible, yet there it was. She slipped the phone into her pocket, took a deep breath, and walked to the keyboard as the crowd applauded. Whether this was the beginning of something bigger or just a strange detour in her life, she wasn't sure, but for the first time in years, she was curious to find out. 6 months had passed since that first open mic night at Sunshine Diner. Fall had given way to winter, and winter was now melting into spring. The world outside had changed with the seasons. But the transformation in Lily's life had been even more dramatic. She stood in the back of the community college auditorium, watching people file in for the evening's concert. Unlike the casual crowd at the diner, tonight's audience was dressed in their Sunday best, paying $20 a ticket for what was billed as an evening of local talent. Nervous? Asked Diane, appearing beside her with a clipboard. Lily smiled. Always, but a different kind of nervous now. It was true. The paralyzing stage fright that once made her physically ill had evolved into something more manageable. A flutter of excitement mixed with just enough anxiety to keep her sharp. After performing weekly at the diner for months, she had developed what Trish called her stage legs. "You're our headliner," Diane reminded her. "The last 3 fundraisers combined didn't sell as many tickets as we have tonight." Lily nodded, trying not to feel the weight of those expectations. "I should get backstage." As she made her way to the dressing rooms, Lily thought about how quickly life could change. The video of her first performance had now been viewed over 1 million times. Local newspapers had run stories about her. She'd been interviewed on radio shows and even appeared on a morning television program in the nearest city. Tom Richards, the record producer who had texted her that night, had become a regular presence in her life. His Nashville-based label specialized in independent artists with unique voices, and he believed Lily had something special. For the past 4 months, they had been working together on an EP, 5 songs that told her story, from loss to rediscovery. The diner had become something of a tourist attraction. Frank had expanded the open mic night to twice weekly, with Lily as the main draw. He'd raised her salary and reduced her regular waitressing shifts to give her more time for music. The extra income had allowed her to finally catch up on bills and even start making improvements to her mother's house, which she now visited regularly to compose. In the dressing room, Lily changed into the simple blue dress she had chosen for tonight. Not too fancy, still recognizably herself, but nicer than her waitress uniform. As she pinned her grandmother's locket to the collar, her phone buzzed with good luck texts from Bobby and Trish, who would be coming to the show after their shifts ended. There was also a message from Tom. "Big news to discuss after the show. Knock 'em dead." Lily took a deep breath, wondering what the news might be. Tom had mentioned possibilities. A small tour opening for one of the label's established artists, studio time in Nashville, maybe even a music video. It all seemed surreal, like someone else's life she had accidentally stepped into. Sometimes in quiet moments, she still couldn't believe how much had changed because Frank had threatened her job. What had seemed like the worst thing, being forced to confront her deepest fear, had somehow become the best thing. A stagehand knocked, letting her know she had 15 minutes. Lily thanked him and sat at the small dressing table, looking at her reflection. She looked different now, not just the new haircut or the clothes she could finally afford. There was something in her eyes that hadn't been there before. A spark. A presence. Her phone rang, a FaceTime call from Zoe in Boston. "I wish I could be there," Zoe said when Lily answered. "I've told everyone in my program about you. My roommate's been playing your YouTube videos constantly." "I wish you were here too," Lily said, feeling a pang of loneliness despite all the recent attention. Success was wonderful, but there were times she missed her old quiet life. "Are you coming back to finish the semester?" Zoe asked cautiously. It was a question Lily had been avoiding. When her music career had suddenly taken off, Lily had taken a leave of absence from her graduate program. What had started as a temporary break was looking increasingly permanent. Tom and others kept telling her to strike while the iron was hot, that opportunities in music could be fleeting while school would always be there. "I don't know," Lily admitted. "I'm still figuring it out." After promising to call Zoe tomorrow with all the details about the concert, Lily hung up and checked the time. 5 minutes until she was due on stage. She closed her eyes, centering herself the way she now did before every performance. In her mind, she visited her mother's piano, placed her hands on the keys, and imagined playing just for herself, finding that place where music and memory met. When she opened her eyes, the nervousness had settled into a manageable hum. She was ready. The auditorium was full, over 500 people seated in neat rows with more standing at the back. The stage was larger than any Lily had performed on before, with professional lighting and sound equipment. Her keyboard waited at center stage, spotlit and ready. As Diane introduced her, highlighting her journey from Waitress to viral sensation, Lily thought about how strange labels could be. Was that who she was now? A viral sensation? Or was she still just Lily, the quiet girl who had locked away her music after her mother died? Maybe she was both. Maybe everyone contained these different versions of themselves, waiting for the right moment to emerge. The audience applauded as she walked on stage, smiling nervously. She adjusted the microphone and looked out at the sea of faces, some familiar, many not. Somewhere in the back were Bobby and Trish. Near the front, Tom sat with people from his label, and scattered throughout were regulars from the diner who had followed her journey from the beginning. "Thank you all for coming," Lily said, her voice stronger than she expected. "The last 6 months have been unexpected." Gentle laughter rippled through the crowd. "I never planned to perform again after my mother passed away," she continued, fingers lightly touching the locket at her throat. "Music was something we shared, and when I lost her, I thought I had to lose that too." The audience was silent now, listening intently. "But what I've learned is that music isn't just about the past. It's about connecting to memories. Yes, but also to each other, to the present moment, to possibilities." She placed her hands on the keyboard. "This first song is called One Note at a Time. It's about finding your way back to yourself." As she played, Lily felt the familiar sense of time slipping away. There was only the music, the story she was telling with melody and words, the energy flowing between herself and the audience. She performed all 5 songs from her upcoming EP, each one charting a different part of her journey. For her final piece, she moved from the keyboard to the grand piano that had been brought in specially for the event. It wasn't her mother's Steinway, but as her fingers touched the keys, she felt that same sense of homecoming. "This last song is new," she explained. "It's called Full Circle, and I finished writing it yesterday." The piece began softly, reflectively, before building to a joyful, complex middle section and finally resolving into a peaceful conclusion. It was the most technically difficult piece she had performed publicly, but her fingers moved with confidence and grace that would have astonished her just months ago. When the final note faded, there was a moment of complete silence, that magical pause between performance and response that Lily had come to treasure. Then the audience rose to their feet, applause thundering through the auditorium. Lily stood, bowing with tears in her eyes. As she looked out at the standing ovation, she caught sight of a familiar face in the crowd. Frank, the diner owner whose ultimatum had started it all, clapping and nodding with a satisfied smile. After the show, backstage was crowded with well-wishers. Tom managed to pull her aside to share his news. The label wanted to fly her to Nashville next month to record with their top producers. Her EP had caught the attention of a well-known artist who was interested in a possible collaboration. "Your life is about to get very interesting," Tom said with a grin. Later that night, after the crowds had gone and the excitement had quieted, Lily drove to her mother's house. She let herself in, turning on lights as she went. The house no longer felt abandoned. She had been slowly bringing it back to life, much like the music that now filled its rooms again. She uncovered the piano and sat down, playing quietly, letting the day's emotions flow through her fingers. So much had changed. So much was still changing. Sometimes it scared her, how quickly her carefully constructed life had been turned upside down. But as she played in the quiet house, Lily realized something important. She wasn't just reclaiming her music, she was reclaiming herself, the parts she had locked away out of fear and grief. And in doing so, she was honoring her mother in the best way possible. The following morning, Lily arrived at Sunshine Diner early. Not to work, today she was just a visitor. She had arranged to meet Frank before the morning rush. So, Frank said, pouring her a cup of coffee. Tom tells me you might be heading to Nashville soon. Lily nodded. Possibly. It's all happening really fast. Too fast? He asked, surprisingly perceptive. She shrugged. Sometimes. But I'm figuring it out. Frank leaned against the counter. You know, when I made that stupid rule about staff performing, I was just trying to save the diner. Never thought I'd be launching someone's music career. You didn't launch anything, Lily said with a small smile. You just forced me to stop hiding. They talked about the future of the open mic nights, which had become too popular for the diner's limited space. Frank was considering expanding into the vacant storefront next door, creating a proper performance venue while keeping the diner's casual atmosphere. Would you come back and play sometimes? He asked. When you're not too famous, I mean. Lily looked around the diner where she had spent so many hours, where her life had changed so dramatically. The morning sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the spot where she had first shared her music. I'll always come back, she said. This is where it all began. As she left the diner, Lily felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in years. The future was uncertain, music careers often were, but for the first time she was embracing that uncertainty rather than hiding from it. She touched her grandmother's locket and smiled. She had climbed her mountain, audience and all, and the view from the top was beautiful.